What is your opinion on men that go overseas to date? Do you think that's a good idea, bad idea? What's your general take on it?
I'm actually, believe it or not, fairly neutral because first of all, these are grown men that can do whatever they want with their money and their time and their energy. But with that said, I want men that are doing it to be very intentional and cautious with the countries that they're doing that in. Because a lot of times when men put themselves in these situations, I know that men are going for all hosts of different reasons. Some to find a feminine woman who they can build a life and family with. Some because they just want to do sexual tourism. Some just for the sake of being able to have fun during trips. I get the whole nine, right? All these different reasons and rationales and justifications for doing it. Cool. My issue and concern is twofold. One, men have to recognize that what do you think the men that are in some of these countries, especially the countries where your dollar goes further, how do these men feel about you? And you have to be cautious as more and more men that are coming from your area are doing the same thing. These men will start to get more tribal and possessive about seeing all of these foreigners coming into their territory. It's almost like a sexual form of gentrification. Like it's a thing where people start seeing you creeping in and, you could actually start putting yourself a little bit at risk. So make sure that you're kind of being safe with the areas and environments that you're doing and putting yourself in. And then number two, although it's fine to do that, and it is what it is, I do wonder if there's men that haven't figured out how to get some of the experiences that they're getting over there back here. My issue is like, I'm in the camp that like I've learned that if you can talk to the most beautiful women in one country, you can effectively do it everywhere. The difference is really just the expectations of what is granted. So these women in other countries can actually be just as forward and straight up front about what it is that from a transactional standpoint they want from you. The difference is they're just softer and more feminine when they do it. They still want something from you. They're not just having sex with you guys for free. They're not like, oh, he's American, cool, let me let you smash. It's really about like you're still paying in some way, shape, or form. I'm not going to use Myron's quote of the whole was that all women are gold diggers necessarily, but they all 99% of them don't want you to come with nothing to the table when you're approaching them. So if you're going to do that abroad, be safe about it, be smart about it, and do you.
Could you argue, and this is a thought I'm playing with, when women are the most valuable, they almost gold dig the least? Because that's when women will sleep with like anybody when they're young, like the bartender. It's like when we get older, then we have like money standards. But like what 18-year-old really, I don't see them gold digging as much. Or do you see something different?
No. Yeah. And this is kind of relates to like Rollo and other podcasters, the manosphere, mountaintop perspective of like women don't typically truly understand what a decline from the mountaintop, where on the mountaintop, they start at the top, 18 years old, men their age, men in their 20s, men in their 30s, and potentially men in their 40s are all of a sudden checking for her. She didn't have to do anything to earn it. She's just now seen as valuable. She could, depending on how beautiful she is, she could get access to athletes, doctors, lawyers, celebrity men.
Oh, yeah.
Really wealthy people. And she didn't have to do anything to accomplish it. And when you're born into something like that, and it's reinforced for your first 10 to 12 years worth of adulthood, I'm not shocked that many of them struggle with not seeing. It takes them a while to realize like I'm not getting as much attention as I used to. And as I'm getting older, many of the men that are younger than me, I don't want. And many of the men that are my age are starting not to check for me. It takes them a while for it to really, really click and hit in. And usually it's when men stop offering drinks as much, when they stop approaching them as much. And probably I know the telltale sign when they are in a room and a younger, more fit, beautiful woman walks in the room and she no longer exists to the other men in the room. That is usually when it starts to hit them.
Yeah, I agree. So tell me the story of your dating apps in Atlanta and Chicago and how many likes you got. And what does that story tell us about modern society?
So this story I don't know why it's blowing up so much, but back in 2020, I was on a couple dating apps. I was on Bumble, which is how I ended up meeting my wife. But at the time, I think we were only 2 weeks into knowing each other. I still had BLK, which is a black dating app, up on my phone as well. And early 2020, I had to do a layover flight to Chicago. And I had to fly to Atlanta, sat in the airport for 2 hours, and then, ended up in Chicago and got off the plane. And so this was only about 2.5 hours of downtime. And when I got in the car, I turned my phone on and I actually checked the app. And the app, I forgot, was on and it was going by my geolocation. And when I opened up my phone and opened up that app, after 2 hours in Atlanta and about 20 to 30 minutes in Chicago, I had about 72 to 74 women that had initiated and matched up with me from those two cities.
Wow.
Within 2.5 hours, almost 75 women. And that is a reflection of two things. One, the market is skewed for men that meet and check off certain requirements. If a lot of women think that you're fairly educated, if you carry yourself a certain way, if you know how to dress your profile up a certain way, and if they can glean what you say you do for a living and potentially how much you make, if you land in a city, God forbid if you stay in the city, you have a massive advantage over 80+% of the men that's already there. So just landing in the airports, not even walking around, I had almost 80 women within a 2.5 hour time span. Now, mind you, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a model. I'm not rich or even super rich. And if those are my numbers, can you imagine the guys that actually live there? The guys who are wealthy, the guys who are athletes? It's probably in the thousands. And the reason why that story is so interesting is because as women become more selective and believe that their optionality is unlimited of all the options and choices I have, they don't really realize that when you're not your best version of yourself, the guy who gets that type of attention doesn't have to tolerate it, doesn't have to commit, and will very quickly replace you with no hesitation or trouble. And they don't realize that often until it's too late, when they're at a space and point where they're going to have much more difficulty having children, not having access to the same men that they may have had before. And worse, they may be in a position where for the first time they have to reevaluate if I am going to get married, if I am going to settle down, it has to be with a man that wasn't my first, second, or third choice.
And how did your matches compare? Because I think Tinder's been in the market for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. So how did your matches compare from like today, or then when you said you were 30, to like when you were 20? Or would that have been before? Were you on the apps before that?
No, I had come out of a previous relationship before that. Okay. So I had gotten married around 25, gotten divorced around 29, and 30, I'm back out there in the streets. And, I hadn't been on dating apps before that. So this was my first time really trying dating apps. And I'm 30 by this point. And I was like, whoa, I didn't realize it was this easy. It was a lot. But what I didn't realize is that my experience wasn't every man's experience. I learned that over time with observation, that some guys got way crazier numbers than me. And women, by doing this, where men didn't have to pay a dowry, they don't have to meet your family, they don't have to go to your church or your religious synagogue of some kind. They have to do almost the bare minimum of nothing other than being funny, sounding cool, and looking good to get access to your body and potentially get you to give them a kid. They created a market, probably unknowingly, where men that can do that are now men that look like me are now having body counts, and men that look way better than me are now having body counts that's rivaling kings during medieval time.
Yeah.
And you're expecting those men, all of those men that you want, to want to be not only with you, but only you for the rest of your life and theirs. Interesting.
And so what was that like for you? Because I'm sure getting out of and I don't know, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, so I'm not going to say this was your experience, but I know it's common for men to be taken for granted in their marriages. And so I always wonder what it's like to like almost beg or like, not maybe, I don't want to say that, but like be in a position where you're trying to work it out with a woman that doesn't appreciate you, to going to the streets and it's like all these women are ready to go. I don't know if that was your experience, so you can correct me, but I'm curious what that would be like. Yeah.
I honestly genuinely look at it through the lens of, and to protect her and how that past went. I look at the past so much in terms of my fault, my role, and how things unfolded. I look at it now through the lens of, I ignored red flags both in herself and me. And I was kind of that guy in college and settled with somebody who I thought I could be a good guy with, and I could be the dutiful guy. And the thing that a lot of men is terrified about with marriage, unfortunately, happened to me. You get into these relationships and the version of woman that you thought you were getting, they change. And, before you know it, I had the experience that a lot of men unfortunately ended up experiencing, which is the loneliest I ever felt in my life was when I was married.
And was it like a weight off your shoulders when you got divorced? Like, did you feel free? Yeah.
Oh God. I will touch on that in definitely my own content for sure. But no, it was the opposite, because when you go from trying to be a city boy and doing your thing and having fun and it's different women every week to, all right, now I'm married and stuff hits the fan, you functionally feel like you were robbed of what you thought you were going to get. You thought you were going to get this. And I'm like, wait a minute. So when I'm single, this is how women treat me. This is how often I get sex. This is how nice they are to me and how flirty. Like, I'm getting all these great things that comes when I'm single. And then when we get familiar with each other and it's an everyday routine, things just shift and change. And like me and many friends that I knew, for whatever reason, we didn't pay attention to certain social cues and patterns in history to recognize that was potentially something that could happen. So when I came out, I was actually devastated. I don't think men or women, well, there may be some women that approach marriage specifically with a plan in mind to leave and get certain things as a result of it. But I don't think almost any man goes into it thinking like, this is going to end in 3 or 4 years. So when I came out, it wasn't a sigh of relief. It was brutal, because for us, we don't view it as some milestone or doing divorce parties. We see it as a failure on our part. So I looked at it as a season in my life when I didn't live up to my potential. I probably put myself in that situation too soon. And in hindsight, it was like, yeah, I was devastated. I contemplated a lot of things about what the hell am I going to do with my life going forward. I felt like life was over at that point. So it was brutal, but luckily, we were both still younger. We didn't have any children.
Yeah.
We didn't have any major assets. So it was a pretty clean, even split, but no.
Do you think men can have that lesson without going through it?
No.
Like, yeah, that's what I don't, because if you try to explain that to a younger, like, I don't know if you've ever, and I'm not saying this is your situation, but just a common situation I've seen, it sounds like yours was different, but when guys like the guy who married, let's say Riley Reid, or a guy that wants to simp or whatever, it's like they can't learn unless they go through it. Would you agree with that or disagree?
I do. And I think that actually, shockingly enough, applies to both men and women more often than not. People tend to operate where they truly do believe that they need to know why they should do or not do something. They have to get it. And it's just, I almost want to say it's like a rite of passage where the difference, now what I will say is the difference of how it typically impacts men and women. Men, where it impacts them to the degree where they can't recover from it, usually take themselves out of this life.
Yeah.
Men who go through it and overcome end up being much better, much more accomplished, much more driven versions of themselves. Women who typically go through really, really bad situations, especially if it happens multiple times, they become worse versions of themselves, where they become so jaded, so pessimistic about men, and before you know it, like they become this shell of themselves where they're no longer happy. They're always nagging. They're always complaining. And then before you know it, they're like a miserable person to be around. Whereas the men who tend to be like that, they don't want to be around people. So that's kind of some of the key things I've kind of noted.
Yeah. Yeah. Women crash out. You know what that means? A crash out.
Listen, I have crashed out, so I'm a crash out king. So I've been there.
Yeah,
I've definitely been. Listen, with me going viral. With me going viral, I'm waiting for my crash out moments of people's screenshots to come back. So I know this is coming. So I'm probably gonna beat him to the punch and just, when I do my first intro video to my podcast to say, hey, everybody, it's me. I'm probably just gonna cover it all and get it out the way.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea because I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about paternity tests. So you mentioned a stat that 1 in 3 paternity tests come back with the men not being the father. How did you research that, and what has the impact of that been on society? And do you think it's always been this way?
Has it always been this way? I just don't think we have enough data to go back that far to truly know or determine that. I will say that I have noticed in a lot of Black families, there's always that 1 or 2 cousins that don't look like everybody else, right? And you always, I don't know, you always kind of wonder that. But no, so yeah, stat after stat, study after study kind of saying the same thing. About 34% of paternity tests are always coming back as not the person who was tested or the supposed to be father who was tested. If that's the numbers because of who's been tested, can you imagine what the numbers and percentages would be if all women were tested and paternity tests were mandatory? I'd envision it maybe. So this is why I said what I said about cheating being so high. If a third of women that are getting the ones that's just getting tested are showing that they're not the man that may potentially have been tested and thought he was the father, is not. If a third, 1 in every 3 women are showing this results, and I'm saying their cheating stats may be as much, if not higher than men, especially depending on the age range. I wouldn't be shocked that 40 to 45% of all men that are probably not the father of the child that they're raising.
So you actually think, because I always hear feminists are more like left, anti-man, I guess, leaning folks. They argue that, well, it's actually, I even hear conservatives argue this because they can't believe women are that slutty. That like they think it's because the people that are getting tested are going to be like a worse sample size because they're the ones getting tested. Like that's always the pushback I get. Do you think that's a valid pushback, or like why do you think it's higher?
Because the cheating rates are higher.
Okay.
It is sometimes we try to act like we don't see what's really there.
Yeah.
If the cheating's higher, yeah, more than likely the paternity test situation is probably a little bit higher as well.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I wish I came up with that. I don't want to take that one. Sometimes I give guests arguments that I haven't been able to answer, and I'm like, maybe they can come up with something better.